Hey guys, this is Dana, and this is episode number 63 of the Ask a Question show, the show in which you ask a question about any type of narcissistic or otherwise abusive or toxic relationship or situation, and I, along with the rest of the community here, will do our very best to help answer it. Our goal is to give you the feedback and the support that you need so that you can move forward in getting all of the clarity, closure, and healing possible. And today's question comes from Anonymous, and Anonymous asks, Dear Dana, I just finished watching your Ask a Question episode number 59, and I was wondering if you could talk a little bit more about boundaries. What are healthy boundaries, and are there unhealthy boundaries? The reason I ask is because in my experience, I've been told that I was violating boundaries, but once my eyes were opened, I realized it was just another way for the narcissist to lie to me and blame me for being the one in the wrong. I look forward to your response. Okay. Great question. So, I think it's important if we're going to talk about boundaries that we back up a little bit and talk about standards because standards, boundaries enforce standards is kind of how that goes. So, standards are really just our expectations of life, of ourselves, of other people. And boundaries is more kind of like that actionable step that, once that our expectations are not being met, that it's that actionable step to get things in line, to get back to where our expectations are. So, what are healthy expectations, right? So, or what are healthy standards? Healthy expectations or standards are, I think it's reasonable to expect to be treated with dignity, with respect, and being treated with like you have value, right? I mean, I think that's a pretty good kind of baseline thing to aim for. And if that's not being met, then a boundary has been violated and kind of needs to take place. Now, everybody has their own kind of standards, whether or not they realize it. It's a lot of times it's standards, our expectations, really. I guess another way to look at that is kind of like our self-esteem and motion. And so, if we're being told either by an abusive or manipulative partner that we're not worthy or that we need to somehow settle for crumbs, right? Like crumbs of affection, crumbs of attention, crumbs of honesty, dignity, respect, these kinds of things. If we're taught that we just need to settle for crumbs and be grateful for that, then our expectations of how other people treat us, how we treat ourselves, how life treats us is very, very low. And so that's kind of its own thing. Here's the thing with expectations. So there is a term that's called managing down of expectations. This happens in all toxic, manipulative, abusive type relationships, and it's basically where you have this toxic person that is slowly grinding down their victim's expectations. And so they do this in any number of ways, but a lot of it is just like you said in your question, how you were being told that you were the one with the problem, that your behavior was the wrong behavior. And so because that's crazy making, right? When you're being told, here you are trying to assert yourself and say, hey, I don't like to be yelled at, or hey, I'm upset when you cheat on me. These kind of totally reasonable, right? But the abusive or manipulative person spins that, and then they'll say like, well, I wouldn't have to yell at you if you didn't nag me so much, or if you were somehow a better husband or wife or friend or kind of what have you, or I wouldn't have cheated on you had you done X, Y, and Z differently. And so now the victim starts internalizing all this, and they think, wow, okay, I'm the problem. And so they internalize it. They quit bringing up any issues that they have because they think that they're bad, that they're the ones with the problem, they're the ones. They might even think that they're the narcissist. I see this one a lot. So um, you know, it's hard when you're dealing with a manipulative person because you really have so many different versions of reality going on, and it's very, very crazy making. So healthy boundaries, let's talk about that. So healthy boundaries are treating yourself with value, with dignity, with respect, with compassion. And so if that's not being met, not, I guess that would be kind of a healthy expectation as well. Then there's two parts to boundaries. Let me just say that too. So the first part is in like asserting that boundary, right? So letting somebody know, hey, that's not okay with me. Like, it's not okay for you to lie to me or steal from me or cheat on me or yell at me or kind of what have you. The second part to boundaries is actually having that actionable step where you're okay with leaving. And this is where I think a lot of people, myself included, for a very long time, I still struggle with it. This is where a lot of people, I think, tend to have a hard time implementing the second part of the healthy boundaries thing, right? So, because a lot of us want to stay in this relationship, we want things to change. We want them to get fixed. We want them, we're holding on to hope and promises of change. And of course, if they're giving us hope and giving us promises of change, that's another level of crazy making, because you think that that might really happen, and that maybe your relationship isn't abusive or toxic, that maybe it's just what you're experiencing are like the normal highs and lows of every relationship, right? So there's so many different elements at play, and it's so hard to kind of sort out what's really going on here. But at kind of a baseline level, if you're being treated in a way where you are not being respected, you're not given honesty or sincerity, or you're not being treated with dignity. If you have to sacrifice your dignity to stay in a relationship, then that's a problem. Kind of bottom line. Okay. So, how do you know if a boundary's been violated? How do you really, really know? Especially if a person's manipulating you and they're making it seem like you're the problem and that they're the victim of you. Well, a great way to tell if a boundary's been violated is to pay attention to how you feel. So if you're feeling resentful, if you're feeling angry, if you're feeling confused, if you're feeling frustrated, if you're feeling uncomfortable or awkward, and you find yourself kind of walking on eggshells, in this kind of a situation, odds are that there's been a boundary violation, that you're on some level, either you're seeing it but that you don't want to deal with it, or that you're not seeing, like you're totally denying it, right? So that's kind of that. I think a great way to cut through that, because what that is, if you're not dealing with it, if you're denying a boundary violation, right? You're just going to pretend that that didn't really happen. And lots of people do this. If you're denying it, or if you're not wanting to deal with it and actually take that step, if your partner's cheated on you multiple times and you're still wanting to stay in this relationship, then, you know, that's this is kind of what's called cognitive dissonance. And so it's sort of like how we justify and minimize and deny and deflect and blame and otherwise make ourselves okay with the action that we're going to take. So if a person's not ready to leave a relationship, and a lot of us really struggle with that, then they're going to just kind of stuff all of that frustration, all of that anger, all of that disappointment, all of that rage, all of that awkwardness, uncomfortable feelings, all resentment, all of that. They're going to stuff it deep down. Now, granted, all of this ends up coming out because it doesn't just go away. So it comes out as anxiety, it comes out as depression, it comes out as addiction, it comes out as lashing out, it comes out as a lot of times very like passive aggressive kind of behavior, like door slamming, silent treatment, yelling at the kids, cutting. Teenagers cut a lot. Adults cut a lot too. Kind of self-mutilating type things. So it's important that you kind of deal with and it's easier said than done, and I totally know that, but dealing with what is and then kind of acting accordingly. Another way I think to kind of help cut through the cognitive dissonance is to ask yourself this question and to frame it in this way. So ask yourself, how would a person who valued themselves act in this situation? Would they even be in this situation? And so I think kind of taking a step back out of it, and you're kind of asking about kind of like what would this like neutral third party person here do in this situation? What would this person who really valued themselves do? And how would they act? And then to kind of examine that, and I think that'll help to really be able to see the situation for what it is. So that's what I have for you. I hope that does help. And I'm going to link down to the support group and everything down below. So, as always, lots of love to you guys. You are not alone. You are not crazy, and you really can move forward and heal from this. So, take care, and I will talk to you soon. Okay, bye.